Hello, welcome to Claret and Blue. My name is Dan Rowlandson and I'm joined by a special guest this afternoon to give us the lowdown on Moussa Diaby. It's Chris Williams, a Bundesliga journalist. Chris, how are you?
Dan, thanks very much. I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
No, thank you for joining us. We do this for every new signing that we have at Aston Villa now, where we kind of have a brief look at the player that Villa are getting from somebody who knows them better than we do, somebody that will have seen them play more often than I have. We'll go through his best attributes, his strengths and weaknesses and those kind of things. First of all, before we get into all that, what's your kind of overall reaction to this signing, Villa pulling off a big kind of statement signing, it feels like?
Yeah, it is. Obviously, they've paid a good fee for him as well. And I think he's got a really good deal, actually. His market value is probably a little bit below, but I think we know these days that clubs don't tend to sell players for market value. They try to make a little bit what it's worth to the club. So I think although it's a hefty fee, I think Villa have got him for a really good price, especially for the type of player he is. It's a really good deal, I think, because a lot of clubs will have been looking at him, and they have been looking at him for a while. I've been lucky enough to watch him since he moved from PSG to Bayer Leverkusen. And yeah, he's a really, really good player. I think he's got the strengths and the characteristics to do really well in the Premier League. Sometimes Bundesliga players have struggled to adapt over. If you look at Timo Werner, Kai Havertz to some extent, Jadon Sancho at Manchester United has struggled a bit. But I think Moussa Diaby is a perfect fit for a team like Villa who are flying under, or who were flying under a great manager at the back end of last season. New managers come in. I think it's part of Unai Emery's model, and I think he's going to fit it really well. I think you can all be excited. I'll be excited to see him in the Premier League. Devastated to see him leave the Bundesliga. We can see a lot of exodus of talent, but you guys can be very excited, I think.
Yeah, somebody that you mentioned who's maybe struggled coming over from the Bundesliga, Leon Bailey at Aston Villa, and that's somebody we'll talk on a little bit later as well. We did a podcast a couple of days ago where it's kind of getting used to Villa shopping in different markets. So when they were first promoted, it was the likes of Trezeguet and El Ghazi for 10 million or so. A couple of seasons ago, it was Leon Bailey, Emi Buendia for 25, 30 million. Now we're shopping in this different bracket of Diaby, João Felix has been mentioned on loan, things like that. It's a different level for Villa to get used to, but it's a sign of an ambitious club that Villa don't just want to be in Europe for one season and go, well, that was good, but we'll go back to being mid-table again. They want to kind of recruit in a positive manner to go, no, we want to attack this and we want to be a mainstay in European football.
Yeah, it is, and I think this is a signing that can sort of testify to that. Obviously, Diaby's got experience in Champions League, Europa League, so he brings that European quality to come through, and he'll bring that experience as well to a side. And yeah, to me, it just smacks that Emery's looking to build a side to push on. And as we've seen last season especially, you get the traditional big six. If a couple of them have a poor season, that leaves the room for others to come. I don't think there is a big six in the Premier League anymore. I think you're looking at a big 8 or 9. There's clubs that have got money to spend. There's clubs that have got great managers and looking to play really good football. So there's 8, 9 teams fighting for 4 slots. That, of course, doesn't work, which then makes the competitions below it just as important, I think. I think in England and maybe in the UK, Scotland as well, the Europa League and the Conference League have been scoffed at quite a bit. But I think we saw West Ham's run last year to the final and winning it. That is actually a decent trophy, and it builds on experience and it lets you get into the higher level. And then if you win that, you get into the higher level as well. There's multiple routes into the Champions League these days as well. So I think it's all good for Aston Villa that this is the type of signing that you want to make. I think it should strike a little bit of fear into teams around where you want to finish. So look at anywhere from 4th down to 8th. And I think Aston Villa are in that fight now. They've got a really good manager and they're building a great squad. And you could finish 4th, could finish 8th. It's up for grabs, I think. But yeah, this is the type of player I think Villa would need to recruit. And he hopefully should then attract the same level of quality. Well, if he's going there, perhaps I'd like to go there. And you're now fighting Liverpool, Newcastle, Manchester United to some extent. Arsenal have been tipped for Diaby for quite a few seasons, and Villa have come in and got it done and signed him. And yeah, it's a good sign, I think, for Villa. Yeah,
it's a very good transfer for Villa already, with Tielemans on a free, Pau Torres for 30 odd million, and now Diaby as well. Just checking his age there, I thought he was 24, and it's only just recently 24 as well in the last couple of weeks, which is obviously a good age for a player with still loads of potential and room to grow. it kind of feels like one of those signings that, as much as it's an expensive one and something that Villa aren't used to in terms of breaking their transfer record, if this was one of those other clubs that Villa are competing with, Newcastle, Liverpool, Spurs, whoever around that kind of bracket, you'd go, that's a good signing. Like, I'm jealous of that. I wish we could have that kind of clout to get somebody like that to us. Almost feels like, again, I don't know where I'm getting this from, but it feels a very Liverpool signing. Like, when they had like Salah, Mane, and they need to replace those guys at some point. You kind of identified Diaby even a couple of years ago coming through 22, 23. He'd be a good Liverpool signing for 30, 40 million euros. So for Villa to have kind of swooped past any competition and gone, yeah, we'll have him, shows the attractiveness as Villa as a club and Unai Emery as well as a coach. And yeah, it feels like a big deal, this one.
Yeah, and I think it is, as I said earlier, it's a sign that Villa are going in the right trajectory. They're historically a very big club, European Cup winner, of course. So, you've got your table there, or you've got your seat at the top table. You've earned that over the past, a little bit, not as bad as Forest, but you've had your bad times. And now you look to be looking back at the good times. And yeah, I think you should be looking forward now. I think it's always good. Clubs that look backwards tend to stagnate for a little bit. You should be looking forward. And I think you've got the right manager who had a really bad time at Arsenal. I think a lot of people took the mick out of him, especially the way he spoke, which I think is very strange because he's a foreign guy and he speaks very good English. And I struggle myself going to Germany. There's not that many English people who translate very well when they go abroad. So I think managers like Emery should be applauded and appreciated when they come over and they try immediately to settle in and to get themselves in the club and get themselves in the environment. And he looks at, I've got a few friends who are Villa fans, and they're really impressed with him. And I think they should be. He's got really good pedigree, not just from his time in England, but also with his time in Spain. So, yeah, a good capture. And now a manager or a coach that looks to be bringing in the right type of players. And he's getting backed by your board as well, which, of course, is something that fans from across the Premier League, they're either really happy with the board or they absolutely hate them. Seems to be no in the middle. So I think you guys can be quite happy with what your board's doing at the minute.
Yeah, definitely. We're in feels like a special place as Villa fans at the moment. We just want to keep riding that crest of a wave. And it does feel like, we've had these conversations on the podcast a lot about like success feeling inevitable with Villa at some point. And it's a silly thing to say with how quickly football changes, but they're kind of putting all the building blocks in place that you could foresee Villa winning something at some point in the next 2 or 3 years if we continue this trajectory, of course. Just talk me through what Diaby brings. What kind of player is he? What's his kind of key attribute? Feels like from the YouTube highlight reels I've seen, raw pace is something that Villa have been crying out for, and he is rapid.
Yeah, he is. And raw pace is the best thing to describe him as. And he's not just a player that can run, he's also a very clever player. I think what I may have said a couple of seasons ago is he had raw pace with little end product when he was at Bayer Leverkusen first, but obviously he was a lot younger then. But he's worked on that, and with the different coaches, especially Peter Bosz. I tweeted out yesterday that I was lucky enough to spend a couple of days at Bayer Leverkusen in their Champions League campaign in and around their fixture with Juventus, and they played a derby match against Cologne on the Saturday after that midweek fixture. And I was lucky enough to be able to watch them train and to be hosted by the club. And Diaby spent extra time once everybody else had gone in because Peter Bosz had obviously identified some key specifics that he wanted him to work on, and that's what he did. He worked on them in his own time when the rest of his teammates were getting a shower and getting ready to go home. So you got yourself a player who is team focused and coach focused. But yeah, he has got that raw talent. He one-on-ones, dribbles, very, very good. As I say, he'd always whip past his player, get to the byline, and then your 5 out of 10, what was the end product? He's worked on that a lot in the last few seasons. He's also worked on where he can play. So when we first saw him, he was an out-and-out winger. And now he can play more in that forward line. So he can be left-hand side, or in fact, he can play in any one of the three positions of a three-forward line. So he can play as a winger, or he can play as a wide forward. All depends how Emery wants to play. And then, of course, he is versatile enough to play in the centre. So I don't think he will play there. But if you've got injuries or if tactics dictate, he can play in the centre of midfield as well as the wide areas. And he can also play, I'd say, in more of a dropped position from the forward, so more of a 10 role, but it's certainly not his strength. But he's got that versatility that I think every club needs in a Premier League to be able to spring surprises on the top clubs or the clubs that are fighting above them, and to be able to offer a plan B. And he gives all that. He's a very, very good player, technically gifted. But in the last few seasons, what we've really seen is him start to use his brain a lot more. So he's also a very intelligent player now, which makes him sort of a complete package, I think.
Unai Emery's almost the perfect head coach to kind of learn your game off if you're willing to put the time in. It's interesting you mentioned like the different positions, because we're all kind of thinking that Villa maybe need 2 forward signings, like an out-and-out striker as well. But if we can sign Diaby, who can play off the right-hand side or in the centre as well, Villa played a second striker effectively, and it was one of Bailey, Buendia. Whether we see Diaby playing off the right, which I would suspect we would, but if he could fill in as that kind of second striker role off Ollie Watkins, or like you say, even replace Ollie Watkins if he is injured, God forbid, who's not had an injury in however long, that's a nice bit of versatility to have as well. Tell me about his personality a little bit. There's just a tiny little insight there into like his kind of hard work rate and staying behind for training. It feels like, I've said this in the Torres video as well, Villa recruit good people as well, is how it feels, good kind of personalities for a dressing room. It's not just about footballing ability. You want kind of nice, intelligent individuals and good humans to be at the club as well, to represent Aston Villa. Does Diaby tick those boxes as well?
Yeah, he does. He's a very pleasant guy. I wouldn't say he's very nice, because sometimes I think nice people don't win things.
Yeah, true.
And he's done a lot in his career. So I think he's got his head screwed on, and he's a nice, amenable guy. But if the game's not going particularly well, or you need someone to grab the game by the scruff of the neck in the area that he's in, he's very up for that. So he's not just nice. He can roll, it's a terrible cliche, but he can roll his sleeves up and get involved whenever he wants. So you get him that as well. But he's a very personable person. Always speaks very well when he's done pitch side duties, or in the tunnel area afterwards when the guys are coming out. In Germany, there's normally a small mix zone outside the changing room area, and he's always very personable, always very happy to chat. Likes to, I wouldn't say toe the party line, but he won't give you anything that's going to write your headline. So he's not a troublemaker, nowhere near a troublemaker. He just seems the type of guy, when he's been at Bayer Leverkusen, that he's happy to be there. He's happy to play regular football, and he's very personable about it. So if you're looking for someone to come in and start to immediately gel with the teammates around him, and somebody who's not going to rock the boat, somebody who's going to be focused on what he wants to do, he's definitely that type of player. And I think all teams need that. Sometimes, occasionally, you need a superstar who's got a bit of a chip on his shoulder, but no, he's not that. He'll come in and he'll do his job, and he'll do it very well, and he'll be very hard working.
I never really like to dwell on this part of the show too much, but we always have to look at kind of one negative or one downside, just for balance of what's his pros and what's his cons. I saw somebody on Twitter, I'm not sure it was you, another journalist, I think, describe him as a Lamborghini going forward, but a rusty old banger going backwards. Is that his kind of worst trait, that he won't track back and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say he's a rusty old banger. That might be a little bit harsh. But he's had the luxury by Leverkusen of not maybe having to drop back as much, because they play a really high press, and they've got midfielders behind and defensive midfielders who fill in that gap. But yes, he has on occasion been guilty of losing his man in transition, or after the transition not being able to get back and get his man. And if we do a fast break, can he recover from that quickly? But he's been working on that. I would say maybe for his first couple of seasons, 100%. I wouldn't put him in the lazy bracket, but I'd put him in the wasn't quite as interested in defending as he was in attacking. Now I think he's a little bit older. Obviously, he's mid-20s, and he's slowly starting to reach those prime years that he knows what he needs to do. And I think Emery's the type of coach that will expect the same level of discipline going forward as the same level of discipline coming back. If he's given a job to track back, to bring his marker, to work hard on the edge of the own box in order to break to reach the opponent's box or the side ends, he'll do that. But yeah, rusty old banger's a bit harsh, I think. Maybe if he's a Lamborghini going forward, maybe he's just a bog standard Focus getting back, but he's working on it.
Yeah, that's good. And again, Emery is somebody that will kind of hammer that into him and his coaching staff as well. It's interesting the way he fits into Villa. And again, this is only just dependable on what we saw Villa play last season. Alex Moreno, left back, was bombing forward and playing with Jacob Ramsey really high up the pitch. And Matty Cash, or whoever was right back, Ashley Young as well, a lot of the time, would drop in with Konsa and Mings and almost become a back three. That kind of plays into Diaby's weaknesses a little bit, that if he's not going to track back, at least you know that you've got the right back, he's going to stay behind you and not be overlapping all the time. So if Villa play the same way they did last year, there's probably a kind of a nice balance now, that if we're attacking down the left with Ramsey and the fullback, and down the right we now have Diaby as the outlet, that kind of makes sense. Is that where you see him fit? I don't know how much you saw of Villa, but is that where you see him fitting in straight into the first team on that right hand side?
Oh yeah, he's an instant starter. I think if you're going to pay that sort of money, he's going to be an instant starter. But he is ready. The only thing I'd say, and it's with any Bundesliga player coming over, Bundesliga is quite similar to the Premier League in the style of tactics. But people who don't watch any other league apart from the Premier League, I think sometimes they forget how fast it is and how competitive a league it is. And players do need time to fit. Not everybody's going to be Erling Haaland and come straight in and set the world on fire. He's a generational talent. I think if he'd come from Molde to Manchester City straight away, you get the same answer. You'd need to go to Salzburg or Dortmund. He was ready. Diaby might need a few games to get used to it. Might need a month or so. And we've seen with other coaches, when they bring players from the Bundesliga, they don't tend to drop them in. They tend to maybe drip feed them in for the first month. If Aston Villa don't have that luxury, fans shouldn't get frustrated if for his first couple of games he's just trying to find his feet in the league. But once he does find his feet, he'll be absolutely fine. But yeah, I'd expect him to start straight away, especially for that. And also in his experience, not just domestic experience, but European experience as well, and cup run experience. He's got a player who's got it all, so he should be. I wouldn't say first name on the team sheet, but he'll be up there.
Do you think there's anything in his game that will make him struggle to adapt, or is it just the Bundesliga versus Premier League thing?
I genuinely think he's got everything, in his toolbox, if you want to call it that, to be successful in the Premier League. I just think sometimes players who come from Germany, they watch the Premier League. Of course, everybody watches the Premier League, and they'll see, oh yeah, it's quite fast. Maybe it's a little faster than our league. But I think we've seen with players who come over and struggle to adapt, maybe they haven't thought, wow, I didn't really expect it to be this higher level of competition. And genuinely, he doesn't have that many negatives, and his main negative he's worked on, which for me anyway was end product.
Talk to me a little bit then, just to end, about his relationship with Leon Bailey. Villa Twitter accounts posting photos of Diaby and Bailey together in goal celebrations from Bayer Leverkusen, going, oh, let's reignite this for Aston Villa. I don't know how the two play together in terms of on the pitch at the same time for Bayer Leverkusen, but obviously for Villa so far, Bailey has played off the right more often than not, or in that second striker role. So if he's going to continue to do that, these guys it's unlikely they're going to play in the same team. Can Diaby reignite Bailey a little bit? Because he's struggled, I think it's fair to say, over the last couple of seasons.
Yeah, I mean, of course, they'll know each other from past, so there'll be that relationships there that they can build off the pitch and hopefully translate that to on the pitch. I don't know if he'll reignite him as such, or maybe they'll get the best out of each other, but they'll already have an understanding of how they like to play. And if they're on the pitch at the same time, they'll of course be able to slip back into the old workings that they've had when they're playing either in the Bundesliga or one of the cup competitions that they played in together. But I'd expect them to work well together again. I don't know, as I say, if they're going to help each other and maybe reignite Bailey's fortunes, but it's definitely a player that can adapt, not just to Leon Bailey, but can adapt to all the players around him, and can maybe help not raise their game as such, but take them on. I think you ask any football player, when a new player comes in and they start playing well, it does give everybody a little lift. And I think that's what Emre and the Villa coaching staff, and of course all Villa fans will be asking for, is can he come in and lift that and get Villa off to a good start in the season. And that's the sort of thing you want to do. These days you need to get off to a good start and carry on. And yeah, I'm pretty sure he'll be up for that, whether Leon Bailey's playing on the same pitch as him or whether they're just together in training.
So if you had to give a message then to end this show for Villa fans, of it, be excited but also be patient, is what I've taken away from this 20 minutes or so.
Yeah, 100%. Be excited, because he's a fantastic player. And once he's settled and once he's happy, you'll see a player who's very willing to take other players on, who's very willing not just to try his luck from distance, but also link up with players around him when he can, and one that'll spread the play. But yeah, just be patient. I think sometimes Premier League fans aren't patient because they see a lot of money played for a player and they expect instant returns, and sometimes it can be a challenge. But he settled well when he came over from France to Germany, so I can't see why he wouldn't settle again.
Lovely stuff. Chris, thank you very much for your time. It's very much appreciated. I'm sure all the Villa fans watching this will thank you as well. If they want to go and follow you on Twitter for more insight into what you do, I'll link that down below. Thanks everyone for watching this or listening on Spotify. We're back with John Townley over the weekend. He's in Washington at the moment on Villa's pre-season training camp, so we'll check in with him and do a Q&A or something and get his verdict on the Diaby deal as well. Chris, thank you very much for your time. Thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you again soon.